Welcome one and all to the Friday edition of the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. He's Brett Erlich. Who else could he be? Brett, how's it going?
It's going fine. I've got a shtuck right here.
Yeah, is because you lifted a weight. There was some talk
because I
about
did
that
a
before the
bit
show.
about lifting weights, and that's more physical activity than I've done in a very long
while
time.
Pretending to lift a weight. I mean, even Trump was able to do his thing, and I think he was okay after.
Yeah, but John, he's done that for over a year in his soapbox speech. So he has a lot of reps under his belt, but obviously it doesn't work. So his belt is more of a more could be considered cordage.
Thank you for being here. What you need to know, dear listener and or viewer, is there any other way that someone could consume this? I don't know. We'll look into it. Is that Brett and I were talking about one of the stories we will be talking about before the show. And it's always weird when we have to stop in the middle of a conversation to begin the show, and then we can't pick it up until later, but we're gonna, okay?
Do it.
It involves Taylor Swift. I personally think she shouldn't have been able to release and record her music. I'm kidding, it's not about that. But we're gonna talk about her and a lot of other stuff. We're gonna be checking in on the GOP primary. We're gonna be checking in on Trump's circle of cronies and how they're escaping consequences for what they've done. We're gonna preview what will, probably not that far in the future, put me and Brett out on the street, so that'll be fun. And we'll be talking about movies and plantations and Christmas as well. There's a lot to talk about. So if you're on a platform where this makes any sense, please hit the like button, share the stream, and you can send us comments, tweets, and super chats, and be the one to get our final $100 Blue Apron gift card of the week. If you play your cards right or play your keyboard right and write in with something interesting. And with all that said, Brett, are you ready to do this thing?
Let's do it. Whether you are or not, I've been more than kind.
Whether you kind or not, fairly mine.
So I just got a text message from my healthcare provider being like, "Hey, this thing's been approved. We're gonna give you a call in a half hour, and you just have to take it." I can't take it.
No, if you need to step away and take the call, you can. I have less of an issue with that than us discussing that right now. So anyway, put your phone away, get your A in gear, and let's talk about our first story.
I'm not a candidate.
As my kids would say, that's my jam.
Nikki Haley, down by 26 in her home state to Trump, attacks DeSantis.
Too lame to lead, too weak to win.
DeSantis, down 32 to Trump in Iowa, attacks Nikki Haley.
You can't trust Tricky Nikki.
There's only one candidate trying to stop Trump. Christie is the only one who can beat Trump because he's the only one trying to beat Trump.
I'm in this race because the truth needs to be spoken. He is unfit.
Christie has indeed released his first TV ads of this GOP primary. He's putting a six-figure allocation of funds specifically in the TV play of that ad in New Hampshire. And you'll notice that he's sort of striking an interesting stance here. He is attacking Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, saying that on the one hand, they're trailing massively behind Donald Trump, so that's an issue for them, but also they're focusing too much on each other, whereas he is releasing this ad focusing on them. Now look, his point, I think, is that they're trailing, and perhaps one of the reasons they're trailing is because they're not putting enough attention into Donald Trump. And outside of this ad, irony, put aside for the moment, he has been far more critical of Donald Trump than the rest of the Republican candidates combined. That said, I just want to just briefly point out one thing that I found funny, Brett, about that ad, was that he's like, Nikki Haley's down by X in her home state. Ron DeSantis is down by a bunch in Iowa. You know who's down by more? Him. He specifically listed that Ron DeSantis is down by a lot in Iowa. And I'm looking at right now, Ron DeSantis has roughly 5 to 6 times the support in Iowa that Christie does. So I think the joke's on him and a little bit on me because he's the one out of the group that I support. But this is his first effort, Brett. What do you make of it? Will it work for him?
So as of December 11th, in Christie's home state of New Jersey,
oh no,
he is losing to Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Vivek Ramaswamy. That's why he didn't say, what's his name? Ron DeSantis, who's trailing to Trump in his home state, is blah, blah, blah. So the reason that he's attacking the other people, I can pretty much summarize by saying Bernie Sanders was doing very well in the primaries in 2020. But if you added up all the people who weren't Bernie Sanders, all those other ones who were pretty similar to each other and running against Bernie Sanders, their support all added up would be larger than Bernie Sanders' support within so basically, if you unite the opposition to Sanders, you get Biden. And that happened in South Carolina. A lot of people dropped out in order to galvanize that support. Yeah. That is the strategy right now. And what's happening for Christie is it should work to say, well, there's a difference between me and Donald Trump. I'm the only one who doesn't like Donald Trump. And so why are you voting for Nikki Light or Trump Light in Nikki Haley and in DeSantis? But what he doesn't understand is like those people already have the choice between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley, and they're choosing Nikki Haley. And more people are doing that than are supporting DeSantis and Christie himself.
Yeah. Look, for all of them, there are bad strategies and worse strategies. Like there's no like instant, if you just press this button, then Donald Trump no longer, gets 70% of the support. It's tough, but I agree with him that it does look like DeSantis and Nikki Haley are like fighting for, like they're competing over each other's supporters. Even though we're one of them, to get all of them, it wouldn't be enough. Like the only way that this can work is you peel off people who support Trump, because that's the majority of all of them. Now, the only way that you can do that is to attack him. And I don't even think that that's really likely to succeed, but that's the only way that it could possibly succeed. You disagree?
Well, you just like they're going to attack him, John. They will eventually attack him. They need to win this battle before they fight the next one. Trump isn't on the stage with anybody. They need to be the last one standing on the stage.
They need to win this. Well, yeah, but I was in like 2 weeks. Like, how much longer can you wait for that? Well, don't you kind of get on it, or else you're going to be off the stage?
Well, it's a longer road than that.
You think just as long as they do it before Super Tuesday or something?
Well, you never know in Iowa because it's a caucus state. So Iowa being the first thing is exactly in every precinct, the thing I'm talking about happens, not the thing you're talking about. What I'm talking about is everyone's in a gym together. And everybody's like, as long as Trump's support is under 50% really in every little precinct, then unless it's over 50%, then everybody else, when their person gets eliminated in every round, they go to the person who's not Trump, unless their second choice is Trump.
Well,
if their second choice is Trump, then everybody's screwed.
I mean, I think for a lot of them, the second choice is Trump. The issue right now is he's at 48% in Iowa as of today.
So the question is, what can any of them do? Chris Christie's playing his hand. What the hell else is he supposed to do? Is it a winning hand? I think that's implicit in your analysis.
Well, I think the path is harder for him than for some of the others, admittedly. I mean, and you, by the way, pointed out how bad he's doing in New Jersey. You could have stressed it even. He's at 4% in New Jersey.
Yeah.
That's like they chose him as their governor. It's crazy to me that he's doing so poorly.
Bridgegate.
But what's that?
Bridgegate.
Yeah, no, 100%. By the way, in New Hampshire, and this is where he's running the ads, Trump is at 46%. Notably, Christie is actually in third place in New Hampshire. Ron DeSantis is in 5th place behind Ramaswamy. So I guess it makes sense if he's gonna have any chance to break through, it is probably going to have to be in New Hampshire, because as of right now, in Iowa, he's at 3.8%. So he's got significantly more support in New Hampshire. So tough road regardless. By the way, really fast, just note, the ad is being shown across local and cable TV, as you might expect, live sports broadcasts, that makes sense. But it's also targeting CNN, CNBC, and MSNBC's Morning Joe, which I just think is such an interesting strategy for a Republican primary candidacy to be targeting these places where, again, like, maybe there's, I guess maybe some Nikki or some DeSantis supporters maybe who are watching that, but I don't think a lot of the committed MAGA people are watching it. So again, I think that reveals a lot about the strategy.
So in New Hampshire, it's a version of an open primary. So one of the strategies, like if you're an undeclared voter, you could just show up and be like, I want to vote in that one. And then you can't vote in the other one. And because, I mean, and that's a strategy. And the other last thing I'll say is the road is long to the White House, sort of. And historically, people have been like Howard Dean was leading until he went, yeah, and everybody galvanized against him. Like, it's less likely will happen under Trump, but like, you've got to, that's why we play the games as the sports analogy, to make a sports analogy.
Yeah, it is going to be tougher because obviously Trump is much more of a known quantity on the national stage than Howard Dean was at that point. And you're right about the open primary. I never know how much, like this isn't even an explicit strategy to bring Democrats in. Sometimes they try that. And even when people try that, I don't know how successful even that is. In this particular case, he has going for him that the Democratic Party has done a pretty good job of pretending that they're not even going to have a primary. So many Democrats might be willing to say, well, I guess it's not going to matter since we're not having one, even though there is. And so that frees them up a bit to cross over, perhaps. Maybe that's the best Hail Mary that he has, is to do some, sort of tricky quasi underhanded stuff, based on the structure of their primary. We'll see. With that said, why don't we move on to another story, because we have a lot that we do want to get to. Two Trump-aligned lawyers have now had their apology letters that they were required to write as part of their plea deals released. And we're going to read them in whole for you. And it will not take long, as you'll see. But first, before we give you the apologies of Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro, we want to remind you of what I think an at least relatively good quality apology looks like from Jenna Ellis.
If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people of Georgia.
So that is Jenna Ellis. I don't know how honest that crying is. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. I don't know. But even if it's not real, she is at least trying to give across the idea that she is truly sorry for what she has done. Now, I want you to compare that to the apology by Sidney Powell that reads, I apologize for my actions in connection with the events in Coffee County. That's the entire apology. And I don't know if maybe she talked a little bit with Kenneth Chesebro, but his apology says, I apologize to the citizens of the state of Georgia and of Fulton County for my involvement in count 15 of the indictment. That's maybe worse, because she's saying whatever it is that happened, I apologize for all of it. He's like, that specific count in the indictment I apologize for. Brett, I don't love him. I don't think that those are good apologies. What do you think?
It has severe, it is your birthday energy. Not happy birthday at all. So with Jenna Ellis, her whole defense is that she was this young, naive, budding lawyer, and that she got in over her head, and people who understood and appreciated the legal process better than her took advantage of her. And it shows completely in the two different apology styles, because hers, like, she doesn't understand that the only reason for you to plead to this is so that you're on the record having shown contrition. And so everybody could say, not only did you plead guilty, you apologize for it. Why would you apologize for something that you didn't do? You can't go back on it in the future. But the more specifics you give in your apology, the more people are able to use that against you in the future. Powell and Chesebro know that, and they acted it out that way. And poor, Ellis is just like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm crying, my bad. That's whether it's a genuine apology or not. Like, people cry when they're sad. She might be sad for other things besides this at the time. Like, her life is falling apart. She's reading something, potentially thinking about something else, but it's also possible that she genuinely feels it. But one thing is certain, that she is very much that naive moron that she got in trouble for being.
Well, They seem to be doing pretty well for themselves, the other two. I mean, they had to do their technical apology. It was sort of an apology, and that was a part of the deal. As a result of that, they got a sentence that included probation but no jail time. And they were also allowed to plead guilty under Georgia's first offender law, meaning that if they can complete their probation without violating the terms, like doing another coup, or committing any other crime, their records will be wiped clean. So that sort of ties into what you had said about the way that they structured the apologies. Like very soon, this might totally be off their records. I don't think most people will forget about their involvement. I think this kind of follows you to the grave, but it doesn't look like they're gonna have any really long-term consequences. And by the way, I loved your reference to it is your birthday. Other people had some thoughts. Crazy Frank wrote, she really poured out her soul there. Chevron said, could have been worse. Dear Coffee County, I'm sorry I got caught. I like James's Bart Simpson chalkboard energy there. That's pretty good. Troy says, I think the judge should have insisted on at least 500 words for essay in creative fiction. But we know that would have just been a Chat GPT deal at that point. I'm assuming they wrote the 13-word apologies themselves. Any other thoughts?
Well, they definitely wrote them by hand. Before I saw that was your in your graphic, I was like, yeah, cool. So now write it 500 times on the chalkboard for me. Like that's what it felt like.
Yeah, and by the way, it has this like totally insincere child sort of thing. And then if we go back to graphic 2, that is just so heightened by the juvenile penmanship of Kenneth Cheesebro. It just like there is nothing genuine and adult and professional in substance or in style in this non-apology.
I love that he's also only apologizing to the citizens, but the illegals, I did nothing wrong. I maintain my innocence.
And they're gonna get away with it. Okay, well, anyway, we're gonna keep track.
Away with it.
Well, they got the plea deal. They're not going to jail or anything. It raised their profile. Like they're probably gonna get other jobs as a result of it. I mean, I don't think Sidney Powell is like totally like, she hasn't been exiled to the hinterlands 100% or anything. No?
But I would argue they already were in the category where they would get the exact same jobs from the exact same people. Now they just have more egg on their face and ignominy, so that only people who are using them for like silly grifts would do it. But I think the more wily, horrible people will not hire these individuals in the future. It will only be strange attempts at lower and lower profile. And many will fail, and eventually, yeah, they'll hit a couple lucky rungs on the ladder as they fall down it. But
maybe they can supplement their income with some cameos. They could script out apologies for other people that take 3 or 4 seconds to record. They could bring in a lot of money.
At least they didn't write my B.
That's the whole thing. I think the word apology was probably required to be in there by law, and that was literally the only regulation. Anyway, with that said, we do have to take our first break, but when we come back, Taylor Swift, Gaza, Megyn Kelly, together at last after this. Okay, everybody, let's have some fun, not on the topic, but perhaps between me and Brett, starting with this.
A group that NGO Monitor has described as highly political, presenting a highly biased view of the Israel-Palestine war, ignoring any Palestinian responsibility for hardship, and contributing to the demonization of Israel. That is the group Taylor Swift thought it might be fun to help raise money for, attend the fundraiser for, and she owes Israelis and Jewish Americans an apology. And I hope they boycott her events until she issues it, because attending this thing was wrong. It was wrong. Do some Googling. See what they do in Gaza to gays. See about women's rights in Gaza, Taylor.
Megyn Kelly quite angry at Taylor Swift there because Taylor Swift did sort of some promotion for a charity. Basically, her and her friends attended a show by actor and stand-up comic Rami Youssef, who posted to Instagram that the proceeds for his tour would be donated to the American Near East Refugee Aid Organization. This is an NGO providing relief to Gaza as it faces a bombing campaign and invasion from Israel. So she provided what NGO Monitor, another organization, has said about Anira. Megyn Kelly did, and said that Taylor Swift should do more Googling about organizations that will be recipients of aid from charity events that she went to, which is interesting because when you Google other things that have been said about that group, including by NGO Monitor said that most of Anira's focus is on development assistance and emergency relief, and the quality of these programs is considered to be very high, which is high praise from the organization that Megyn Kelly cited as her only source for saying that this group is not deserving of any money. No one should raise any money for it. And I found in particular her saying that Taylor Swift should not help raise money for Anira because Anira provides a biased view of the conflict. As if Megyn Kelly is committed to describing the conflict in all of its complexity and nuance with balanced humanity and compassion for everyone being affected by it. The only reference I think that she made to the suffering that this charity money is supposed to help allay is that there's Palestinian responsibility for it. Other than that, there's nothing. She doesn't think Taylor Swift should instead demand that the money goes to a different Gazan relief organization. She doesn't want it to be promoted. She doesn't want Taylor Swift to be involved in raising any of this money as long as the money is intended to help those who are currently suffering or unhoused in Gaza. We have a lot more on this, but Brett, what do you think?
Yeah, don't do what Megyn Kelly does, anybody.
I try not to.
Don't do it. Megyn Kelly is on the record. I mean, her recent employment history shows she's on the record for adapting her coverage based on who's paying her at the time. She was at Fox. She was gone from Fox. She had a daytime show where she didn't really bring up a lot of the stuff she would bring up on Fox. And now that she's back on her own or doing the Sirius XM show, she's back to the thing she used to do. So that you just have, it's Megyn Kelly. You kind of have to understand that about her. When it comes, I am certain that Anira is whether or not they provide a biased take on what's happening in the region. That shouldn't yes, if they're doing things that actively are anti-Semitic and horrible, and they are doing a disservice to a bunch of people, then yes, find another agency to donate to. But if the money if your goal is to raise money for people who are innocent victims of all of this, and they get the money to the innocent victims of all of this, then you can give your money to those people. But I think Taylor Swift really is more representative of, quote, most decent human beings than Megyn Kelly is. Because most decent human beings are like, I want peace, I want stability, and I don't want suffering. And if you're more like Megyn Kelly and you look for your opening to vilify a certain group, then you're doing the wrong thing.
I agree. It was very reasonable. You were not doing what Megyn Kelly does there. Yeah, it's weird. I am used to seeing people like Megyn Kelly on a show like Megyn Kelly's do something akin to, and I don't just mean in this conflict, I mean in other situations that have been like this over the decades, would say something like, it's terrible that so many of them are dying, but insert real politic defense of whatever the status quo is. But they don't even do that anymore. She doesn't even have to pretend that she cares about the more than 18,500 people who have died, the vast majority of whom are almost certainly not affiliated with, let alone in Hamas. She doesn't have to pretend that at all. And not just her, you might say, well, what ethical obligations does she have? She's just, a blowhard on a show. True, but we've had multiple Republican debates now that there have been effectively no references by the candidates or even by the moderators to civilian casualties in Gaza, even though every time they do one of these debates, the number is significantly higher than it was during the last one. They don't even have to do that. And in particular, when it comes to the aid, it's not like the aid money is going to bring back the thousands of dead kids, but it might help to stop more from being added to that number. Because what's killing people in Gaza is not just 2,000-pound bombs. Half of Gaza's population is estimated to literally be starving right now. It's been described, by the way, the situation there as a catastrophe, a tsunami, a humanitarian tsunami, actually. It's not only a catastrophe. And more than 90% of the people in Gaza have been driven from their homes. It's winter. There's little electricity. There's virtually no internet. There's less than 100 trucks getting in on a daily basis to feed a population of millions of people. I'm not even saying that Megyn Kelly has to say, give them the aid and no more bombing of civilians or whatever. I don't think she's gonna change her position on that, but she wants to have the bombing and have them not eat cake too. It's so bizarre, the moral position that they are allowed to hold and still have significant audiences. Brett.
I mean, this basically, how deep do you want to understand what's happening is a real question that everybody doesn't ask themselves, but they're acting based on it. It's very difficult for me to put to really articulate this a lot. But for most people, the extent of their political interaction with folks it's value signaling, and it is, what the hell can I do in this world? And I need to feel good about who I am. Now, people always oversimplify everything in order to feel good about who they are, or they overcomplicate everything till they get to a point where they feel good about it. And whether they're the amount that they're willing to look into histories and interactions and people and put themselves in other people's shoes is dependent on how long they have to work before they feel good about themselves. And I don't blame anyone for that. I understand that, like, and Taylor Swift is like, I want to learn, I want to do things. And most people are like, I want to give money to the refugees and the people whose life has been made hell by world politics. Okay? Because to a certain extent, everyone's life has been made hell at some point by world politics, unless you're like, I mean, even if you were English, but you'd have to go back a very long time, and everybody has it, but a lot of people are willing to ignore it based on what they can get away with and how many people can be in their Venn diagram of similar like tweet themes before they're like, no, I'm good here. I mean, yeah, that's it. Like it's all over the place. It's like I hear it all the time when people are talking about the IDF. We get mad at IDF soldiers, but are you mad at Vietnam veterans who were conscripted? No one does that. No one does that because it's easy. It's so goddamn easy to say, well, and we said it on this network, I'm just mad at the soldiers, at the IDF. The IDF is doing. I know carpenters in America who are former IDF soldiers because they had to be because of where they were born. They don't like it.
For context, you haven't said this, but I think people need to understand that it's compulsory military service in Israel. Everybody serves in some form or another, which is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
It's just so really fast.
Just because everyone get into these, and I'm in a monologue, right? But because it's just like bouncing around in my mind. Because for me, it's like most of the discourse is good, but there's certain parts where people cross over into like this oversimplification, horrible, like either anti-Semitic or Islamophobic conversation because they just they're like, I need a villain.
Yeah, well, if you pay attention to world politics for long enough, you'll find them, definitely. But so you might be following more of the online conversation about this than me. I can say I haven't seen a lot of specific demonization of, I don't know, individual IDF soldiers or just the concept of military service. I think mainly it's Israeli military strategy. Like, and by the way, I would say my approach to this, I think, would be very similar to what it would be in the case of Vietnam soldiers. Those individual soldiers who participated in like, Mile A or whatever, I think definitely should have our scorn, but we should also bear in mind that the vast majority of them wanted no interest in being in Vietnam. And I would apply the same thing to the IDF. If there's particular people who are stripping down Palestinians and marching them around in freezing temperatures or whatever, or other stuff that individuals like cops here might be caught doing, then I think we should apply our scorn to them. I don't think simply the fact that you're a part of a group whose organization you are required to be a part of makes you a villain.
Thank you. And I just ask that people be their own, police of that discourse. But it happens halfway through every diatribe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I will try to check myself mid diatribe. This is from a poll conducted by the Israel Democracy Institute, which is not a polling organization that I have a lot of knowledge or history with, so bear that in mind. This is not Morning Consult. This isn't, whatever. But after the pause in the hostilities that happened last month, they say that more than 3/4 of Israelis said that the offensive should resume without adjustments that would reduce either Palestinian civilian casualties or the international pressure that is coming as a result of those civilian casualties. A Tel Aviv University poll conducted in late October, obviously that's in a much earlier phase of this conflict, said that only 10% of Israelis thought the army was using too much firepower. Now, I'm assuming those numbers would be different because the numbers in terms of how many had died or been driven from their home was very different in late October than it is now. But bear in mind, Biden, they're once again pressuring for a change in strategy to lower civilian deaths. That's at least what the news is saying today. So Brett, what do you make of that?
But that's it. This is how it all works, right?
Okay, what did I do?
The polls from late October.
Well, I acknowge that.
You did,
that's what we have.
Rasmussen
didn't poll today.
Yesterday's coverage about dumb bombs, what the, it's so difficult for me because it's I hate it. I feel like the referee in a sport I hate. I hate it. I hate it all. It's the dumbest sport in the world, but everybody seems to be doing this right now. You just asked, it's the easy for you to say Olympics right now. According to people who don't live there and didn't live there and who's, everybody's relative in this region was the victim of a horrible, or individuals alive in that region. Everybody there was just the world's just tried to kill everybody there. Everybody there. Everybody there they've recently attempted to kill everybody or their grandfather there. So when these things happen, when horrible events occur, because everybody understands that this is a powder keg of old world animosity. I'll just speak for Jews. I'll speak for all Jews. No one likes doing it. I'm not that Jewish. I didn't get bar mitzvahed, but it's everybody who has ever run this region has eventually just been today we're gonna kill the Jews. More often it's Christians who did this. Depending on the ascendancy or decline of the empire in charge, that they've suddenly been now we're gonna kill Jews. All of them treated Jews as second-class citizens. And this is not to justify any murder. This is not to do that. This is when people say literally in their tweets, I don't understand how people can be like this. The answer is there was never some military campaign that's convert to Judaism or die. Ever. The only mass conversion to Judaism that I know of is when the Kazagain or whatever it was called was asked the Jews, the Muslims, and the Christians, who should we convert to? The Jews said, not us. The Christians said, don't become a Muslim. The Muslims said, don't become a Christian. And they were all right, we'll become Jews because they seem like the least extra. No one else has ever done that in the history. There's never been a mass conversion because they don't want it. And so that was a bad decision apparently, because you can go kill a lot of people in the name of your religion and suddenly they're willing to die for it afterward. It's asking why a powder keg is explosive. It is because of all the chemical things that are about to have it be that way. That's it.
I think that is a very helpful addition of context, religious, psychological, historical context to why we might see the polling data that we do. I think that is very helpful.
That's all my point is for.
Yes. But I would say the reason why I am interested in the polling data in this case is, as we talked about before the show, the same reason that I would be interested in when we find out 9 years into the Iraq war that 300,000 Iraqi civilians have died. I want to know why so many people still support the war effort. I want to know why so many Russians still support the invasion of Ukraine when so many Russian soldiers are dying. I want to know why so many parents still think there should be effectively no regulations on guns when more, kids are being blown away by, in every one of those cases, I'm sure you could have a dissertation length analysis of the psychological and historical and social and cultural and economic reasons. And I think you should. As you said, The question should be, how deeply do you want to understand this? And you went deeper than I think most people will. But I still want people to respond to, a 2-month-long bombing campaign that's killed 18,500 people by saying, maybe we dial it back a little bit because many of the people who are dying were not even alive the last time there was an election in Hamas. And doing this seems almost certainly to lead to future cycles of the same sort of violence that are the historical context you added. So I'm an outsider religiously, historically. I've spent literally 7 days in Israel in my life, I think. But I am glad that you can provide a different perspective.
And I will say, like, this, I pretty much day 4 of this, I said what my position was going to be, and I've stuck by that, which is, I know it just ceasefire. Like, I said that like a week after. I said, but like, that is me looking at Israelis who, like, the day that the UN was like, here's where you guys are and here's where those guys are, like there's it's invasion, counter invasion, whatever you want to call it. Like, I have to look at them and say, yeah, there was the biggest invasion since 9/11, like 29/11s by whatever, and I have to tell them, I don't care. You should do a ceasefire because that's just how it is there, and it's horrible for me to say that to the faces of people who are saying, like, they just showed up and killed a bunch of our people in our borders, which the UN said this is where it should be. And I'm willing to take that position publicly.
Brett, I think you are very reasonable. And I'm glad we can talk about it. Obviously, it's a difficult situation, and a case could be made that you and I, even working in concert, will not solve it. But we can at least try to be reasonable about it and hopefully provide an environment for other people to be reasonable about it. Do not test that hypothesis by checking the YouTube comments later, but the live comments, I think, quite reasonable. That sound effect sounded a little bit like Howard Dean, who, by the way, was my candidate in that race. Brett, was he yours at one point?
My brother had a history of working for people who would later turn out to be in prison or terrible. So he was just like fresh out of college and worked for John Edwards. So I was like, oh, that guy seems nice. And then he was like, my daddy worked in a mill, and also I'm having an affair with my wife who's dying of cancer.
He seemed too slick and polished for me. I liked the more raw Howard Dean at that point, but anyway, that's not what we got. Okay, so with that, if you're just joining us now, please hit the like button because we've got some news to jump into. Megyn Kelly is now threatening to sue her former colleagues over at The View for what she says is spreading slanderous accusations against her. Is she right? Does she have a case? Well, we'll have to wait to see if it makes it to real court. But before all that, we're gonna pick it up in the damage report court. I've missed that. So The View was discussing Hunter Biden's alleged influence peddling that's being investigated by the GOP right now. And during that talk, co-host Ana Navarro insinuated that a certain someone had done the same sort of thing, saying, look, did Hunter Biden influence peddle on his last name? Yes, he did. So did half of Washington. People sitting at this table did it. This caused a shocked reaction from her co-host. Alyssa Farah Griffin then asked who at this table peddled their last name, to which Navarro responded, I'm not talking about currently. So you can do the math on that. I think we know who she's talking about, although she didn't name her, and that could matter for the decision of the court. To which Megyn Kelly responded, I don't understand why my former colleagues at The View bring me up and slander me on an almost weekly basis. It has been years. Move on. I have never been accused of a crime in my life and am a patriotic American. I would never and have never influenced, peddled in my life, let alone with foreign adversaries. Not all politicians' children are the same, and I am no Hunter Biden. All accusations are absurd, defamatory, and slanderous. I will be consulting my lawyers regarding what was libeled against me on The View this morning. And then goes on to say, The View is an ABC news program. I do not take it lightly when any news program suggests I engage in criminal behavior, especially as a former employee of ABC News. So the lawsuit could be dropping any moment now. Brett, what do you think? Is she guilty In this case, I guess that would be wrong to be mad, or is she innocent and this case is merited?
She is a mistrial. I declare a mistrial because they're obviously talking about Abby Huntsman. Governor John Huntsman, former UN ambassador or Chinese ambassador John Huntsman. It's not just one famous politician's kid that graced the table of The View. And also influence peddling. I'm pretty sure Elizabeth Hasselbeck also did that, peddling influence off of her famous husband, Matt Hasselbeck, who won the Super Bowl, I think. So
I think, but will not Google.
I refuse to Google anything. But like, no, it's obvious. Like it's an opinion news show. They don't have you there for your award-winning journalism, Megyn McCain. They have you there to try to influence your fellow panelists and transitively America towards your conservative position on various news items. You were there because of your name. You never at any point said, no, I think it's just because my last name is McCain that I kept getting all these news jobs thrown at me, despite my demonstrable inability to effectively execute this job. You never said, I'm not qualified. You said, thank you. I don't blame you for that. I blame America, I guess, for always liking the offspring, and I guess the world for kind of always liking the offspring of people they kind of like.
100%. Yes. Megyn McCain, I was going to say Kelly. Megyn McCain is not guilty for using her father's name to get basically every media job that she's ever had. She is guilty of not acknowledging that that's why the jobs were proffered in the first place. Anybody who gets handed a job that pays well and is fun to do and isn't that much work should take it and shouldn't feel guilty about it. But you should be willing to step back and say, why did I get this position? Now, is that influence peddling? I don't know. I would also say that Ana Navarro is not saying that Megyn McCain was like approaching the UAE or anything. They mean in the same way that Hunter Biden, and I literally said this yesterday in the program, every one of his jobs he got because his last name was Biden. That is indisputably true. It's as true of her, and Ana Navarro was using the same sort of loose definition of influence peddling, specifically on their last name, as Hunter Biden was. So no, I think she is guilty in this case. Yeah, it's not slander, it's not libel or defamation or whatever. It was a vague insult, not even specifically attributed to you.
She is guilty of being nowhere near as entertaining as Hunter Biden's exploits.
That's true as well.
It happens all the time, and they don't always succeed as much as Megyn McCain has, to her credit. Like Luke Russert. People gave him a job. It didn't really last for very long. So she did a good job. She got quite a bit out of it. But like, I think this is just exactly like I cut a little too close to the quick right there. And she gets a little upset.
Yeah. And I will end with the way that I began. Again, I'm sort of defending her. I know that must seem weird because I believe I've insulted her multiple times here. Like, put yourself in the difficult position of someone who's the child to a senator. Like, what is she supposed to do? If she's genuinely interested in the media, is she supposed to turn down the jobs? Like, every position she gets is at least arguably going to be as a result of her name. Even if she's super interested in it, is working super hard. I don't know that we have evidence of that in this particular case, but let's say, devil's advocate, that she was super committed. Like, you're in a difficult position at that point. So I do have a little bit of empathy there. I would just have 100 times as much empathy if you acknowledged that you got the positions because of your name.
Yeah, and then the ultimate hybrid of Abby Huntsman, or I guess Megyn McCain and Luke Russert, is actually Tucker Carlson, because his father was both a media figure, Dickie Carlson, and also the ambassador to the Seychelles, so a political figure as well.
Sure. Hold on, Kyle is saying John is defending her so he isn't a hypocrite when the show becomes the damage report with Raina Iadarola. 100%. And by the way, a version of this I'm sure can be applied to virtually anyone. Some people have connections behind the scenes. It's not their name, but they have connections. I have, I'm a white male. Typically that's helped in America. I'm ridiculously attractive. That obviously provides benefits. You just have to acknowledge that stuff and then you're innocent once again. Brett, how did you get this position? You're funny.
How did I get my position here? I was in the same building. How did I get my position at ABC? Hard work, no name recognition. Thank you very much.
You go.
Watch the year. 2023, I don't know when.
Watch it, everyone. Watch it. Okay, and watch us while you can, because you might not be able to watch us for much longer. Stand by for the rise of AI.
I'll be back. Hasta la vista. Calculating cyber operations. I'm sorry, John. I'm afraid I can't do that.
The world's first fully AI-generated and hosted news network is set to launch next year. This is LA-based station Channel One, which aims to be the first nationally syndicated news station to use AI avatars instead of human anchors. They have a promotional video sort of laying out how this is gonna work. Take a look.
Hello, and welcome to Channel One, a new way of consuming, reporting, and thinking about the news powered by artificial intelligence. Today, you'll witness AI-generated stories and headlines, captivating visuals, and data-driven insights. From global news to finance to entertainment, we'll show you how technology enables us to bring you a global perspective 24/7, right from the heart of our AI-native newsroom. All presented by our team of AI-generated reporters.
Let's start with our reporters. You can hear us and see our lips moving, but no one was recorded saying what we're all saying. I'm powered by sophisticated systems behind the scenes, and I can speak in any language. Για παράδειγμα, αυτή τη στιγμή μιλάω στα ελληνικά. Channel One's anchors can even be completely generated to have their own personality, appearance, and voice.
I'm reminded at times like this that I don't have a backup plan. This is the one thing that I can do and make a living on, and now that's gonna be gone. Thanks a lot, founder and entrepreneur Adam Mosum, who said that the news aired on the network will come from legacy outlets. So again, bear in mind, the AI, as it always does, is going to rely on what humans produce. It can only reuse that stuff. It can't do anything on its own. It can't go into a war zone and interview the survivors. It can't do any of that stuff. Just bear that in mind. They say have commissioned freelance reporters. To the extent that they do that, then it's not all AI generated, but we'll see. Additionally, they will generate their own reporting from public records and government documents. And like with all AI, I'm sure they will make no mistakes, not hallucinate in any way, and you can take to the bank everything that they report. They're also, by the way, going to be producing their own stock footage and photos through AI generation. So they say they're gonna have captivating visuals. They're not real visuals. They will just be AI generated stuff of like crime scenes and everything. Like Brett, how is this gonna work in practice, and are you worried?
It kind of already works this way in practice. As someone who has held auditions for hosts to audition and then we hire them, not here, I've never interviewed anyone to be hired here other than like, that's on camera. But it's amazing. Like they give you, like there's already an organization called the Newswire that sends the stories to places, and there are plenty of news reporters and local news people who actually do write their own stuff, but a lot of the packages you see are just handed down from on high, and the meat puppets, aka the hosts, do that already. Now, this is just another invention in a long series of inventions that has cut down on the total number of people in newsrooms. They actually sell one-man show news desks. So I would sit at a desk like this, and like an organ player uses their feet and their hands to kind of control the bass and all the different things. You sit there and you do an entire local news broadcast with prompter you're doing yourself, taking the elements you're doing yourself. It has been that way for a very long time, and it's terrifying, but we have been conditioned to actually accept a robotic voice telling us the news, and we take it as authoritative.
Yeah, I have more to say about this. So unfortunately, we are at the end of our first hour. I think at the beginning of the aftermath, we're gonna talk for a minute or two about this because I just have a lot to say. So thank you everybody who's listening on the podcast. Go rate and review us, please. And for the rest of you, we'll be back after this.